Commander Sarah Chen stood in the middle of what used to be New Geneva's Central Plaza. The beautiful crystal buildings that once reached toward the purple sky now lay in broken pieces around her feet. Smoke rose from every direction, carrying the smell of burned metal and something worse that she tried not to think about. 3 days ago, this place had been home to 400,000 people. Children had played in these streets. Families had shared meals in restaurants that overlooked the alien ocean. Scientists had worked in laboratories, trying to understand this new world that humanity had claimed as their own. Now there was nothing but ash and silence. Sarah's boots crunched on broken glass as she walked toward the communication center. Her team followed behind her, their faces hidden behind protective masks. They had been searching for survivors for 2 days. They had found none. The aliens had been thorough. Sarah remembered the first time she had seen them. The hegemony, they called themselves. 4 different alien species working together, ruling over dozens of star systems. They had seemed so advanced, so civilized when they made first contact with humanity 6 months ago. Their ships were massive and beautiful. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had built. Their representatives spoke in perfect English and seemed genuinely interested in meeting this new species called humanity. The meetings had gone well at first. Humanity was excited to join a galactic community. There was talk of trade, of sharing knowledge, of learning from each other. Earth's leaders had been so proud when the hegemony agreed to visit human colonies and see what humanity had accomplished among the stars. Sarah had been on New Geneva when the hegemony delegation arrived. She remembered how excited everyone had been. Children had made welcome signs. The colony's best chefs had prepared special meals. Everyone wanted to make a good impression on their new alien friends. But something had changed during that visit. The aliens had walked through the colony streets with strange expressions on their faces. They had asked uncomfortable questions about how fast the human population was growing. They had seemed disturbed by how quickly humans had adapted to life on this alien world. When they left, their final message had been simple and cold. Humanity grows too fast. Humanity adapts too well. This cannot be allowed to continue. 72 hours. That was all the time they gave humanity to evacuate every single colony beyond Earth's solar system. 12 worlds that humans had worked so hard to build. 12 places where people had made new lives under alien stars. The evacuation had started immediately. Ships had been sent to every colony. People had packed what they could carry and prepared to leave the only homes many of them had ever known. But the hegemony had lied. They had never intended to let anyone leave. Sarah reached the ruins of the communication center and began searching through the wreckage. Her equipment detected a faint signal from the emergency transmitter, buried under the collapsed roof. If it was still working, she might be able to send one last message to Earth. The attack had started with the children. That was what made Sarah's hands shake with rage as she dug through the debris. The hegemony had targeted the schools first. The daycare centers, the playgrounds. They had wanted to break humanity's spirit by destroying what humans valued most, but they had made a mistake. They thought that killing human children would make humans give up. They did not understand humans at all. Sarah's team helped her pull away chunks of broken wall until they found the transmitter. It was damaged but still functional. She connected her portable communication device and began recording her message. Around the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on 11 other worlds. Sarah had received brief transmissions from some of them before their signals had been cut off. Captain Torres on Proxima Centauri B had managed to send 43 seconds of video before his transmission ended. Sarah had watched hegemony ships shooting down civilian evacuation vessels as they tried to escape. Commander Park on Kepler 186F had sent a simple text message. "They are jamming our ships. No one can leave. They want us all dead." From Wolf 1061C, the message had been even shorter. "Tell Earth what they did to our children." Sarah finished her recording and prepared to transmit it. She knew the hegemony ships were still in orbit above New Geneva. They would detect her signal and come for her. But this message had to reach Earth. People had to know what had really happened here. She looked up at the purple sky where she could just see the dark shapes of alien ships waiting in space. They were probably watching her right now. Let them watch. Let them see what they had created. "This is Commander Sarah Chen, New Geneva Colony," she said into the transmitter. "The hegemony has killed everyone. 400,000 civilians. They targeted children first. They are not interested in coexistence. They want humanity extinct. She paused and looked around at the destroyed city one more time. They think they have taught us a lesson about our place in the galaxy. They think we will be afraid now. They think we will accept their rule and never try to expand beyond Earth again. Sarah smiled grimly as she prepared to send the message. They are about to learn something about human nature that their thousands of years of civilization never taught them. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we do not give up. She hit the transmission button and watched the signal strength indicator show that her message was being broadcast across human space. Every ship, every station, every communication relay would receive it. Earth would know what had happened. Earth would see the footage from all 12 colonies. Earth would understand that this was not a political disagreement or a trade dispute. This was genocide. The sound of approaching aircraft made Sarah look up. Hegemony hunter ships were descending from orbit, coming to silence the last human voice on New Geneva. Sarah stood up and faced them without fear. She had done her job. The message was sent. Soon, every human in the galaxy would know that the hegemony had never intended to share the stars. They had only wanted to remove the competition. As the alien ship surrounded her position, Sarah thought about something her grandfather had told her when she was a child. He had fought in Earth's last great war, back when humans only killed other humans. He had told her that the most dangerous thing you could do to a human being was to hurt their family. Because, he had said, humans are very good at learning from their mistakes, and once they learn what you are really like, they become very good at making sure you never get the chance to hurt anyone ever again. The hegemony was about to get a lesson in human nature. Sarah activated the emergency beacon that would broadcast the location of every hegemony ship in the system, then sat down in the ruins to wait. She was not afraid. She was thinking about 400,000 people who would never see another sunset, never hold their families again, never get the chance to build something beautiful under an alien sky. The hegemony had wanted to teach humanity about their place in the galaxy. The lesson was about to begin. President Maria Martinez stood at the podium in the emergency session chamber of the Terran Council. Behind her, massive screen showed images that no human should ever have to see. Burned cities, mass graves, children's toys scattered among the ruins of what had once been humanity's greatest achievements among the stars. The footage had been arriving for 3 days now. Final transmissions from all 12 human colonies beyond Earth's solar system. Each message told the same story. The hegemony had lied. There had never been any intention to allow evacuations. They had wanted humanity wiped from every world except Earth. 4.8 million people. That was the final count. 4.8 million human beings who had been living peaceful lives on distant worlds, building homes, raising families, conducting research, creating art, dreaming of a future among the stars, all dead. President Martinez looked out at the faces of the council members. She saw anger there. She saw grief. She saw fear, but most of all, she saw something that the hegemony had not expected to see in a species they considered primitive and weak. She saw cold, calculating fury. The hegemony has sent us a message, President Martinez said, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. They believe they have taught us our place in the galaxy. They believe that by murdering our children, our families, our friends, they have shown us that we are not welcome among the stars. She paused and looked directly into the main camera that was broadcasting this session across Earth and to every human ship and station in the solar system. They believe that fear will make us accept their rule. They believe that grief will make us weak. They believe that the loss of our colonies will convince us to never again try to expand beyond this single star system. The chamber was completely silent. Every person in the room understood that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered for as long as humanity existed. They have made a profound miscalculation about human nature. President Martinez gestured to the screens behind her, where the images of destroyed colonies continued to play. These images will be broadcast to every human being on Earth and throughout the solar system. Everyone will see what the hegemony really thinks of us. Everyone will understand that this was not a political disagreement or a territorial dispute. This was attempted genocide. She walked closer to the camera, her dark eyes reflecting a cold fire that would have made the hegemony pause if they had been able to see it. To the hegemony, if you are monitoring our communications, listen carefully. You have shown us who you really are. You have demonstrated that coexistence is impossible. You have taught us that in your vision of the galaxy, there is no room for humanity. President Martinez smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Thank you for the lesson. We will not forget it. The session ended with a unanimous vote. Every military frequency went silent. All trade communications stopped. Research vessels were recalled from the outer system. Humanity's vast network of communications satellites and deep space monitoring stations simply stopped broadcasting. To anyone watching from outside Earth's solar system, it looked like humanity had given up. The hegemony congratulated themselves on efficiently dealing with another primitive species. Their reports described how quickly the humans had accepted their defeat, how completely they had withdrawn from any activity that might threaten hegemony interests. But there were a few things the hegemony did not notice. They did not notice that while civilian communications had stopped, not all of the human ships were returning to Earth. They did not notice that several large military vessels had simply disappeared from their monitoring systems. They did not notice that humanity's mining operations in the asteroid belt were continuing, but the materials being extracted were no longer going to civilian construction projects. Most importantly, they did not notice that Earth's surrender was the most elaborate deception in human history. Admiral Catherine Volkov stood on the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's most advanced warship, as it drifted silently through space beyond Pluto's orbit. Around her, the ship's crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for a mission that officially did not exist. The Retribution was not alone. Scattered throughout the outer solar system, 47 other ships waited in perfect silence. They had been declared lost in training accidents. Their crews had been reported as taking extended leave. On paper, they did not exist. In reality, they were the foundation of humanity's response to the hegemony. "Admiral," reported the ship's communication officer, "we have received the final recall order. All remaining civilian ships have been accounted for. Earth is now broadcasting complete compliance with hegemony demands." Admiral Volkov nodded. Phase 1 of the plan was complete. As far as the hegemony knew, humanity had been completely cowed by the destruction of their colonies. All human activity beyond Earth appeared to have stopped. "Initiate Phase 2, she ordered. All ships are to proceed to designated coordinates in the void between stars. Complete communication silence until further orders. The Retribution and her sister ships engaged their most advanced stealth systems and disappeared into the darkness beyond human space. They would not be seen again for 18 months. But they would not be idle. On Earth, President Martinez stood in her private office and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was celebrating their victory over humanity. They thought they had solved the problem of human expansion quickly and efficiently. They had no idea that they had just created something far more dangerous than they could imagine. Humanity had always been good at learning from their mistakes. But they were even better at learning from their enemies' mistakes. The hegemony had shown humanity exactly what kind of galaxy they lived in. They had demonstrated that there was no room for negotiation, no possibility of peaceful coexistence. They had also shown humanity something else, something they would regret teaching. They had shown humanity how to hate with perfect clarity. Every human being on Earth had seen the footage from the colonies. Every person understood that their species had been marked for extinction by creatures who considered themselves superior. Everyone knew that the only thing standing between Earth and the same fate that had befallen the colonies was the fact that Earth was harder to attack. For now. President Martinez touched a small device on her desk, activating a communication channel that officially did not exist. "Admiral Volkov, this is Phoenix. Phase 1 complete. The galaxy thinks we are beaten. How long until you are ready to show them what beaten humans really look like?" The reply came after a long delay, transmitted through relay stations that had been secretly established in the void between stars. "Phoenix, this is Iron Kate. Give us 18 months to prepare. When we return, the hegemony will learn why it was a mistake to teach humans that the galaxy has no room for mercy." President Martinez smiled the same cold smile she had shown the cameras during the emergency session. "Understood, Iron Kate. The galaxy wanted to see what happens when you corner a species with nuclear weapons and space travel. They are about to find out." She closed the channel and returned to looking at the stars. Up there, the hegemony was going about their daily business, secure in the knowledge that they had eliminated the human threat. They had no idea that they had just created something much worse than a threat. They had created an enemy that would never stop, never forgive, and never make the mistake of showing mercy to those who had shown none to human children. The silence from Earth was not surrender. It was preparation. Admiral Catherine Volkov floated in the command center of the Retribution, watching her tactical display show absolutely nothing. No stars, no planets, no navigation beacons. Just the endless darkness between star systems where no sane species would ever think to look for an enemy fleet. It had been 18 months since Earth had gone silent. 18 months since humanity had appeared to surrender completely to hegemony demands. 18 months of the most intensive military preparation in human history, carried out in the empty void where no sensors could detect them. Around the Retribution, 46 other ships drifted in perfect silence. They had been completely rebuilt during their time in the darkness. Human engineers had studied every piece of hegemony technology they could acquire through careful intelligence gathering. They had analyzed every weakness, every blind spot, every assumption their enemies made about how warfare should be conducted. The hegemony expected formal battles. They expected declared wars and honor duels and civilized rules of engagement. They had been fighting each other for thousands of years using the same basic principles, refined and perfected but never fundamentally changed. Humans had brought something new to the galaxy. Humans had brought guerrilla warfare to the stars. "Admiral," reported Commander Hayes from the intelligence station, "we have confirmation that the hegemony considers the human threat completely eliminated. Their military has been reduced to peacetime levels. Most of their ships have returned to routine patrol duties." Admiral Volkov smiled coldly. The hegemony's confidence in their victory was about to become their greatest weakness. "What about the psychological profiles?" "Complete, Admiral. We have detailed analysis of all 4 hegemony species. The Zephyrians value personal honor above everything else. The crystalline collective operates as a hive mind that breaks down when their communication networks are disrupted. The void swimmers are energy beings who become helpless if trapped in magnetic fields during their migration periods. The architects are obsessed with maintaining order and become paralyzed when faced with chaos they cannot understand. Admiral Volkov nodded. 18 months of careful observation had taught humanity exactly how to hurt their enemies, where it would cause the most damage. Not just physical damage, but psychological trauma that would break their ability to function as a unified force. And our first targets? The Zephyrian supply convoy in Sector 7. 12 ships carrying military equipment to their border worlds. They follow the same route every month, protected by only 3 escort vessels because they consider attacks on supply lines to be dishonorable. Perfect. Signal the Ghost Wind and Shadow Strike. They are authorized to begin the hunting season. 2 ships detached from the hidden fleet and vanished into the darkness, heading for an intercept course with the Zephyrian convoy. They would arrive 3 days ahead of their target, set up the perfect ambush, and disappear again before anyone knew what had happened. The hegemony was about to learn that humans did not care about honor in warfare. 3 days later, Admiral Volkov received the first report from the field. "Mission successful, Admiral. Convoy destroyed. No survivors. We made it look like pirates using modified hegemony weapons. The Zephyrians are already accusing the Crystalline Collective of sponsoring the attacks to steal their resources." Admiral Volkov allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 of the plan was working perfectly. Turn the hegemony species against each other while remaining invisible. Over the next 6 months, similar attacks happened throughout hegemony space. Supply convoys disappeared without a trace. Communication relays suffered mysterious malfunctions that left entire sectors without contact for days at a time. Research stations went silent. Their crews found weeks later suffering from severe psychological trauma, but unable to explain what had happened to them. The pattern was always the same. Ghost ships that appeared on sensors for a few seconds before vanishing. Attacks that seemed to come from nowhere and strike at exactly the right moment to cause maximum disruption. Evidence that pointed to other hegemony species being responsible. The hegemony military began requesting additional security for their operations. Their scientists started developing new sensor technologies to detect stealth ships. Their politicians began accusing each other of conducting secret military operations. But they never suspected the truth. Humans had spent 18 months learning everything they could about their enemies. They had studied hegemony psychology, technology, and military doctrine with scientific precision. They had identified every weakness and developed specific tactics to exploit each one. More importantly, they had learned to fight with a level of coordination and ruthlessness that the hegemony could not comprehend. "Admiral," reported Commander Hayes. The Crystalline Collective has begun implementing new security protocols for their hive mind networks. They are becoming suspicious that their communication disruptions are not natural phenomena. Then it is time to escalate, Admiral Volkov replied. Signal Captain Morrison. The Night Fury is authorized to proceed with Operation Mindbreak. Captain Morrison's ship specialized in cyber warfare. Her crew had spent months developing computer viruses specifically designed to attack the Collective's shared consciousness, not to destroy it completely, but to fragment it in ways that would drive individual Collective members insane. The attack came during the Collective's most sacred ceremony, when their entire species linked their minds together in perfect unity. The virus struck at the moment of greatest vulnerability, fracturing their shared thoughts and leaving thousands of Collective members screaming in confusion as their individual consciousness was forcibly separated from the group mind. The psychological damage was exactly what human psychologists had predicted. The Collective's military forces became paralyzed as their soldiers could no longer coordinate properly. Their leadership structure collapsed as their ability to share thoughts and make group decisions was destroyed. Within days, the Crystalline Collective had withdrawn from all joint hegemony operations, claiming that the other species had somehow poisoned their minds during the ceremony. Excellent work, Admiral Volkov told her staff. The Void Swimmers are next. I want them to understand that migration season is no longer safe for them. The Void Swimmers were creatures of pure energy who traveled between stars during specific times of the year, following ancient paths through space that their species had used for millions of years. They considered this migration to be the most sacred part of their existence. Human ships were waiting for them. The magnetic field generators that Captain Chen's engineering teams had developed were invisible until activated. They created perfect prisons that trapped the energy beings in small areas of space, unable to move or continue their journey. The Void Swimmers found themselves helpless, caught in magnetic cages light years from home, forced to watch as their sacred migration season passed without them. The psychological trauma of missing their most important religious ritual broke their spirits completely. When they were finally released weeks later, the Void Swimmers had become convinced that the universe itself was hostile to their existence. They withdrew to their home systems and refused to participate in any hegemony military activities. That leaves only the architects, Admiral Volkov observed. They should be the easiest to break. Their entire culture is based on maintaining perfect order. The attacks on architect worlds were designed to create chaos that their ordered minds could not process. Human teams infiltrated their cities and began small acts of vandalism that seemed random but followed patterns that drove architect psychologists to madness trying to understand them. Traffic systems failed in ways that created beautiful but impossible traffic patterns. Buildings developed structural problems that looked like artistic statements but made no engineering sense. Computer systems began displaying poetry instead of data, but poetry that followed mathematical principles that the architects could not decipher. Within months, architect society was paralyzed by their desperate attempts to find the hidden meaning behind the chaos. Their military leaders spent all their time trying to decode the patterns instead of maintaining their defenses. Admiral Volkov stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched the final intelligence reports arrive. The hegemony was collapsing from within. Each species was convinced that the others were conducting secret operations against them. Their military cooperation had broken down completely, and none of them suspected that humans were responsible. Admiral, reported Commander Hayes, Hegemony High Command is requesting an emergency meeting to discuss the security crisis. They are considering recalling all their forces to their home systems for defense. Perfect, Admiral Volkov replied. When they concentrate their forces, it will be time for Phase 3. Signal Earth. Tell them that the ghosts are ready to become visible. The hunting season was over. Now it was time for war. Fleet Admiral Thaxmore of the Hegemony Supreme Command stood before the holographic display in his flagship's war room, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. 2 years ago, the Hegemony had been the undisputed rulers of this section of the galaxy. They had efficiently dealt with the human expansion problem and returned to their normal operations. Now their empire was falling apart. Show me the latest incident reports, he ordered his intelligence officer. The hologram filled with data that made no sense. Supply convoys destroyed by unknown attackers using weapons that appeared to be hegemony technology. but modified in ways that were impossible to trace. Communication networks suffering coordinated failures that followed patterns too complex to be accidents. Military outposts reporting contact with ghost ships that vanished before proper identification could be made. Most disturbing of all were the psychological casualties. Entire crews found in states of complete mental breakdown, unable to explain what had happened to them. Soldiers who had been trained for decades of combat reduced to babbling about invisible enemies and impossible attacks. What do our analysts conclude? Thaxmore asked. They believe we are facing a coordinated campaign by one or more hegemony species against the others, sir. The evidence suggests that someone is using advanced stealth technology and psychological warfare to destabilize our alliance. Thaxmore studied the data more carefully. The attacks were too precise, too well coordinated, too perfectly designed to exploit each species' specific weaknesses. This was not the work of pirates or random terrorists. This was professional military operation, conducted by someone who understood hegemony psychology better than the hegemony understood themselves. Have we considered the possibility that this is not an internal conflict? He asked. Sir, what if these attacks are coming from outside the hegemony? What if someone else is responsible? The intelligence officer looked confused. Who else could it be, sir? We eliminated the only other spacefaring species in this region. The humans surrendered completely after we destroyed their colonies. They have shown no signs of military activity since then. Thaxmore was about to respond when an urgent message arrived from the Zephyrian homeworld. Admiral, we are receiving reports of a massive attack on Zephyr Prime. The planet's orbital defenses have been destroyed. The attackers are demanding that all Zephyrian military forces surrender immediately. Impossible. No one has the capability to break through Zephyr Prime's defenses. Show me the tactical data. The hologram shifted to show the Zephyrian home system. Thaxmore stared in shock at what he saw. Dozens of ships that appeared to be using technology far more advanced than anything the hegemony possessed. The attackers had not just broken through the orbital defenses. They had destroyed them so completely that there was no possibility of repair. But what shocked him most was the message being broadcast by the attacking fleet. This is Admiral Catherine Volkov of the Human Stellar Navy. You have 1 hour to surrender all military assets in this system. Any attempt to resist will result in the complete destruction of your orbital infrastructure. We are not interested in harming civilians, but we will not tolerate any threat to human interests. Humans, Thaxmore whispered. But that is impossible. We destroyed their colonies. We monitored their communications. They accepted defeat. Sir, reported his communication officer, we are receiving similar reports from the Crystalline Collective Homeworld and 3 major architect systems. Human fleets have appeared simultaneously at multiple targets throughout hegemony space. Thaxmore felt a cold fear growing in his chest. This was not possible. The humans had been completely beaten. Their military forces had been accounted for. Their communication networks had gone silent. They had shown no signs of preparation for any kind of military action. Unless, show me the intelligence reports from the past 2 years. All incidents of unexplained attacks, equipment failures, and psychological casualties. As the data appeared before him, Thaxmore began to see a pattern that his analyst had missed. Every attack had been designed to exploit specific weaknesses in hegemony psychology. Every incident had been calculated to turn the hegemony species against each other. Every mysterious failure had been perfectly timed to cause maximum disruption. It was them, he said quietly. All of it. Every single incident. The humans have been conducting a systematic campaign against us for 2 years, and we never realized it. His staff looked at him in confusion. Sir, that would be impossible. Our sensors would have detected human ships. Our intelligence networks would have identified their operations. Would they? Thaxmore asked. Or would we have ignored the evidence because we believed the humans were defeated? How carefully did we actually look for signs of human activity after we destroyed their colonies? The silence that followed was answer enough. Thaxmore realized that the hegemony had made a fundamental error in understanding their enemy. They had assumed that humans would react to defeat the same way hegemony species did. They had expected formal surrender, acceptance of superior force, and integration into the existing galactic order. Instead, the humans had done something that no hegemony species had ever attempted. They had disappeared completely, studied their enemies in secret, and then returned with a level of military sophistication that the hegemony could not match. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "the human fleets are broadcasting ultimatums to all major hegemony systems. They are demanding complete military surrender within 72 hours. Any system that refuses will face total destruction of their defensive capabilities." "How many ships are they using?" "Initial estimates suggest over 200 vessels, sir. But these are not the same ships we observed during first contact. The technology appears to be completely different, more advanced than anything in our databases." Thaxmore understood now why the past 2 years of mysterious attacks had been so effective. The humans had not just been conducting psychological warfare. They had been testing hegemony defenses, studying their technology, and learning everything they needed to know to conduct this final assault. "What are our options?" he asked. "We could attempt to coordinate a defense with the remaining loyal systems, pool our resources and try to match their technological advantages." "And how long would that take?" "Approximately 6 months to organize properly, sir." Thaxmore looked at the tactical display showing human fleets positioned at every major hegemony system simultaneously. These were not the actions of a species that intended to give their enemies 6 months to prepare. "Sir," reported the communication officer, "we are receiving a direct message for you personally, from Admiral Volkov." "Put it through." The hologram shifted to show a human woman in a military uniform that Thaxmore did not recognize. Her expression was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its complete lack of emotion. "Fleet Admiral Thaxmore, I am Admiral Catherine Volkov, commander of the Human Stellar Navy. I believe we need to discuss the current situation." "Admiral Volkov, I admit that your people have surprised us. We had not expected this level of military capability from a species we believe to be defeated." "Defeated?" Admiral Volkov smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, I think you misunderstood what happened 2 years ago. We were not defeated. We were educated. You taught us exactly what kind of galaxy we live in. You showed us that there is no room for peaceful coexistence with the hegemony. You demonstrated that your solution to any species that grows too quickly or adapts too well is genocide." Thaxmore felt the cold fear in his chest growing stronger. "You have been conducting military operations against us for 2 years. We have been preparing for this conversation," Admiral Volkov replied. "Every attack on your supply lines, every disruption of your communications, every psychological operation against your personnel has been designed to bring us to this moment. You are now facing a choice that will determine the future of your species." "What choice?" "Complete and unconditional surrender of all hegemony military assets. Immediate withdrawal of all your forces to your home systems. Acceptance of human oversight of your future activities. In exchange, we will allow your civilian populations to continue existing." Thaxmore stared at the human admiral. "And if we refuse? Then you will discover what happens when you teach a species with nuclear weapons and faster-than-light travel that the galaxy has no room for mercy." The transmission ended, leaving Thaxmore alone with the most important decision in hegemony history. 2 years ago, they had thought they were teaching humans about their place in the galaxy. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. They had created an enemy that would never stop, never forgive, and never make the mistake of showing mercy to those who had shown none to human children. Admiral Catherine Volkov stood on the observation deck of the Retribution and watched the hegemony's greatest stronghold burn in the darkness of space. The Eternal Throne System had been the center of alien civilization for over 10,000 years. Its massive space stations and orbital cities had housed billions of beings from dozens of species. Now they were gone. 3 years had passed since the hegemony had made their fatal mistake. 3 years since they had taught humanity what kind of galaxy they lived in, by murdering 4.8 million human civilians. 3 years since they had shown humans that there was no room for mercy in their vision of the future. The hegemony had surrendered 18 months ago, but their surrender had not been enough. Humanity had not come back to the stars seeking conquest or territory or resources. They had returned to conduct an erasure. "Admiral," reported Captain Chen from the tactical station, "the last hegemony shipyard in this system has been destroyed. All military installations have been eliminated. Civilian evacuation is complete." Admiral Volkov nodded without taking her eyes off the burning wreckage outside. The human fleet had not harmed a single civilian during the entire operation. Every attack had been precisely calculated to destroy only military targets, while giving non-combatants plenty of time to escape to safety. But the military targets had been destroyed with absolute thoroughness. What about the data cores? Completely wiped, Admiral. Every star chart, every navigation database, every piece of information that could be used for interstellar travel has been removed. The surviving populations will have no way to leave their home systems. Admiral Volkov allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. That had been the point of the entire operation. Not to kill the hegemony species, but to remove their ability to threaten anyone ever again. Signal the fleet. Prepare to depart for the final target. The final target was a single ship drifting in the ruins of what had once been the hegemony's most powerful battle station. Fleet Admiral Thaxamore had refused to evacuate with the other civilians. He had insisted on remaining behind to face the consequences of his species' actions. Admiral Volkov respected that decision. She also intended to use it. The Retribution approached Thaxamore's ship slowly, weapons powered but not aimed. This was not an execution. This was a lesson. Admiral Thaxamore, she said over the communication channel, I believe you wanted to speak with me. The alien admiral appeared on her screen. He looked older than he had during their first conversation 18 months ago. The weight of watching his entire civilization be systematically dismantled had clearly taken its toll. Admiral Volkov, I must ask, why? We surrendered. We accepted your terms. Why did you continue the destruction? Admiral Volkov studied the alien's face. Even now, after everything that had happened, he still did not understand. Admiral, do you remember what you told your people when you ordered the attack on our colonies? Do you remember why you decided that humanity needed to be eliminated? We believed that your species grew too quickly, that you adapted too efficiently, that allowing you to continue expanding would eventually threaten the established order of the galaxy. And how did you solve that problem? Thaxamore was silent for a long moment. We attempted to eliminate your species entirely. We targeted your civilians. We killed your children. Exactly. You demonstrated that your solution to any species that might become a threat was genocide. You showed us that in your vision of the galaxy there was no room for anyone except yourselves. Admiral Volkov leaned forward in her chair, so we decided to apply the same logic. If your species considers genocide to be an acceptable solution to potential threats, then your species is a threat that cannot be allowed to continue existing with the capability to carry out genocide. But you are not killing us, Thaxamore said. Your forces have gone out of their way to avoid civilian casualties. Because we are not you, Admiral Volkov replied coldly. We do not murder children to make political points. We do not target civilians to break our enemies' spirits. We solve the problem without becoming monsters. She gestured to the tactical display showing the current status of former hegemony space. Every species that was part of your alliance has been stripped of faster-than-light travel capability. Every shipyard that could build interstellar vessels has been destroyed. Every navigation computer that contained star charts has been wiped clean. Every piece of technology that could be used to threaten other species has been removed. Thaxamore stared at the display in horror as he began to understand the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. You have trapped us in our home systems forever. We have solved the problem you created when you decided that genocide was an acceptable policy tool. Your species will continue to exist, but you will never again have the capability to threaten anyone beyond your own solar systems. Admiral Volkov stood up and walked closer to the screen. This is what happens when you teach a species like humanity that the galaxy has no room for mercy. You get a solution that is completely merciless but perfectly just. You wanted to eliminate us because we might become a threat someday. We have eliminated your ability to threaten anyone ever. And what about the other species in the galaxy? What about the civilizations we have not yet encountered? Will you treat them the same way? Admiral Volkov smiled, and for the first time since this conversation had begun, there was some warmth in her expression. That depends entirely on how they treat us. Species that approach humanity with peaceful intentions will find us to be excellent neighbors. We are very good at trade, cooperation, and mutual assistance. We enjoy sharing knowledge and learning from others. Her expression grew cold again. Species that decide to solve the human problem through genocide will discover that we are even better at applied violence and systematic destruction. We are very good at learning from our enemies' mistakes and making sure those mistakes are never repeated. She returned to her chair and looked directly at Thaxamore. You wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy, Admiral. Consider the lesson delivered. We have learned that our place is wherever we choose to be, and that anyone who tries to murder our children will find themselves removed from the equation permanently. Admiral Volkov was about to end the transmission when an urgent message arrived from the communication station. Admiral, we are receiving a distress signal from the edge of the system. A hegemony civilian transport is under attack by unknown vessels. Admiral Volkov frowned. There should not be any military vessels left in hegemony space capable of threatening civilian ships. Show me the tactical data. The display revealed a scene that made Admiral Volkov's blood run cold. A transport ship carrying Zephyrian refugees was under attack by 3 vessels that were definitely not hegemony technology. The attacking ships were using weapons that appeared to be designed specifically for destroying life support systems, rather than simply disabling the target. Someone was torturing the civilians for sport. Those are not hegemony vessels, Admiral Volkov observed. Computer, analyze the attacking ships and identify their origin. After a few seconds, the analysis completed. Unknown configuration. Technology appears to be approximately 2,000 years more advanced than current hegemony standards. Weapons designed for maximum suffering rather than tactical effectiveness. Admiral Volkov realized what they were looking at. Another spacefaring species. One that had been watching the destruction of the hegemony and had decided to move in to claim territory and victims. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All ships converge on the attack site. Weapons free. Protect the civilian transport. She turned back to Thaxmore, whose expression had changed from despair to confusion. It appears that your species was not the only threat in this galaxy, she said. And it appears that we have work to do. The human fleet moved to protect the Zephyrian refugees with the same efficiency they had shown in destroying hegemony military assets. The unknown attackers found themselves facing weapons technology that was several generations ahead of anything they had encountered before. The engagement lasted exactly 47 seconds. When it was over, Admiral Volkov opened a communication channel to the refugee transport. This is Admiral Volkov of the Human Stellar Navy. You are safe. Do you require assistance? The reply came from a Zephyrian captain whose voice shook with shock and gratitude. Admiral, you saved us, but why? We are your enemies. No, Admiral Volkov replied. You are civilians. Your military threatened us, so we eliminated your military. But civilians under attack are just people who need help, regardless of what species they belong to. She paused and looked back at Thaxmore, who was staring at her with something that might have been the beginning of understanding. That is the difference between us and you, Admiral. We solve problems. We do not create them by attacking innocent people. Admiral Volkov ended the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Captain Chen, prepare the fleet for departure. We have new neighbors to meet, and I suspect they need to learn the same lesson we just finished teaching the hegemony. As the human fleet formed up to investigate this new threat, Admiral Volkov took one last look at the ruins of the Eternal Throne system.